Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today, my guest is Prema Gurreri. Before I bring her on, just a couple of announcements. As you can see by my background, I'm still away from the studio. I'll have actually a brand new studio out near the Colorado Rockies in a beautiful location by next week. I'll still be doing as many shows as possible while in transition. You can always get new episodes free on Rokfin, Odysee, and all podcast platforms. Click the link in the description and subscribe on Rokfin. You get our premium content, regular shows, and all the content from every creator on Rokfin. Check out the podcast that we feature on the Forbidden Knowledge Network. You get those on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, and follow us on Facebook. Those links are all in the description. Finally, check out what may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man, C60 Purple Power. It's made from the purest, most rare materials found on the planet and has personally had amazing benefits for myself. But check them out for yourself. Click the link in the description and you're going to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. Today, I want to welcome Prema Gurreri. She is a leading Vedic astrologer, consciousness coach, and business consultant with more than 25 years of experience. She is the award-winning author of Your Sacred Wealth Code, Unlock Your Soul Blueprint for Purpose and Prosperity, and the creator of Your Sacred Wealth Code Oracle Cards and the Sacred Wealth Code Journal. Using the ancient science of Vedic astrology and her gift of intuition, she guides and teaches conscious women visionaries to activate their soul divine gifts and align with their secret wealth code so they can unlock their soul blueprint for purpose and prosperity. Prema, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. It's really wonderful to be here with you today.
Yes, I was looking forward to this. This is one of the topics that I actually haven't done many shows on, Vedic astrology. I've done a little bit, but I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to discussing the history and origin of Vedic astrology and how it really differs from Western astrology. And you also created the Sacred Wealth Code to help give your insights for helping people live the way they desire, which I also want to talk about. But this is also your first time on. I'd love for you to tell us really what led you down your current path.
Oh my, how much time do we have? So I'll give you the censored version, the abbreviated version.
Sure.
I believe that I was born as a seeker. I've always been intuitive, connected to nature, seeing things from another angle. And my journey through my early life really put me in a lot of situations that, like in the movie Juno, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Juno way back when, where the girl gets pregnant and her father asks her when she comes home one night, like, where have you been? She says, dealing with things that a 16-year-old should never have to deal with. And so I felt like I went through a lot of challenges early in life that were really beyond my control, but there were really no adults there. So I had to really, not that I thought I was relying on my guidance and my intuition, but there was nowhere else to turn. And somehow the answer would always just come forth like, oh, and it would work out whatever I did. So I started to gain this real faith and trust just in inner knowing that, it was okay to try new things, do new things, because, things would always, something would provide and things would always work out. So I just went on my spiritual path. And I have to say, yoga was the first place. I started doing yoga when I was like 16 or 17 and really dove into that practice. And Vedic astrology also comes from the Vedas, as yoga comes from the Vedas. And so I was steeped in that tradition, among other things, and eventually became a yoga teacher. And I used to question, like, well, gosh, I'm just a yoga teacher, shouldn't I be doing something else? And then I would always get the message loud and clear. But as a yoga teacher, you could teach whatever it is that you want, because yoga is really this yoking of bringing things together. So I've been on this path from the inside out for many years and eventually came into Vedic astrology. I had after years of teaching and doing readings for people and different things, I had a yoga and healing arts center, which was called Yoga and Beyond, the Yoga of Life. And in my book, Your Sacred Wealth Code, Unlock Your Soul Blueprint for Purpose and Prosperity, I go deeper into that story. But really what happened in there is I was really put in a dark night of my soul because I had a 6-figure in sales business. I thought I was on purpose. I was teaching teachers. I had my own system. I was seeing private clients. I was helping people transform their lives and some of their businesses as well. I had healing practitioners, but I didn't have enough money coming to me. And I had kids, my marriage was falling apart, and like everything was like crumbling around me. And I was like, I don't get it. I really felt like I was on the right path. And I did a lot of soul searching, and I did a lot of releasing energy and patterns until one day I was going to open the door, and I heard it again. You need to let this go. And I was like, well, gosh, what else do I need to surrender? No, like you need to let the building go. You need to let the business go. I wasn't able to sell it, lots of things. So in letting it go, I got it. It was like, wow, and it was just, I felt failure like any business owner would feel at that point. And I just vowed to stay on my knees in this dark night of the soul as I dissolved this business and figure out what the heck, where I was off. So in that process, and we can talk about this more because I don't want to just be a talking head here, but the Sacred Wealth Code is something that was birthed in that process because I really dove into the Vedic astrology and the energy clearing and was really looking at what's going on here. Well, I saw kind of a backwards approach that I was really stuck in the shadow side of what I now call the Sacred Wealth Code, which is based off a scientific principle in Vedic astrology where your purpose planets and your wealth plans or prosperity plans, where they intersect or where they're placed in your soul blueprint, in your chart, there is really our highest value gifts, the gifts that when we have a lot of divine gifts, okay? But when you use those gifts, then the world responds back and sees you. Like, you have this amazing show. You didn't know you were always going to get into this show. We were just chatting about that, but it's provided for you. It's turned into this wonderful adventure. It's also, creates the prosperity for you. And so it's aligned with your gifts, and sometimes we stumble into it, and I help people get laser about it so that they can see where they need to shift and move into that. And for me, it was a lot of letting go of some patterns and beliefs where I was able to step out of that time, shift my business, start working with people in some different ways. I was able to create a lot more revenue, have a lot more freedom in my life. And it really opened up sort of Pandora's box in a good way about allowing me to be on my own evolutionary spiritual journey and help other people in that for themselves and how they're going to put their work in the world. And it's continued to evolve. So that's my condensed answer on how I got right here with you today.
Yeah, right on. That's excellent. Now, I firsthand have witnessed the accuracy of astrology. I've had a few readings, and every one of them has been, extremely accurate. And I've seen the benefits that people have had from astrological readings. But for those in the audience that may not be familiar, tell us, basically, how does astrology work? How can it be so accurate? And maybe tell us a little bit about the differences between Western and Vedic astrology.
Yeah, sure. So there's the ancient seers would say that, and I believe this is true, is that astrology is a way to understand the cosmos. Within our, we're so microscopic in our solar system that, in fact, I was just watching some Nova shows on space, and it's like, we're just so minuscule compared to how much is going on. But this is the world to us. The planets, and some of the fixed stars and the constellations. Let's say that this is the room that we are. And the vehicle that we are born under. And there are certain energetic influences that are affecting us based on when we're born, but then also based on what we are going through, the times, the transits and such that we are going through now. So it's energetics that activate certain energetics with us. Each of us has, let's say, a different receptor system depending on when we were born. And so a different frequency from those planets, from things moving around in the cosmos, activates those frequencies in a very unique way for each one of us. Just like we could say, oh, you're a Sagittarius. Oh yeah, I'm a Leo too. Well, the sun only moves every 30 days, and not every Leo or every Sagittarius sun person has the same traits, because we're looking at so many more things than that. So I believe that it is a science, absolutely. And let's remember what science is something that we think we know about, and then we know more about. It's an ongoing, evolving discovery. It's not set in stone, which is beautiful about science. I love how science can back up some spiritual principles and make sense of some energetic principles. So I think of us as like receptors, or we have these, the planets have, intersect with our frequency in certain ways. And it's just not as cut and dry as where your sun is or where your moon is. There's so many aspects and so many things going on. Astrology is a science, but reading it is an art. So it's an art and a science. And I think that all systems have value. And even if we get into numerology and a lot of other things, there are different ways to help us understand ourselves. I don't use astrology as prediction in any way. I use it as a tool to help people understand themselves, understand the celestial weather, so then we can help navigate the path ahead in a way that's most aligned with what their purpose is, what their heart desires for them. And when we see challenges coming, that how can we suit up and get ready for those challenges? So, hey, I know it's going to be a stormy day. It's 32 degrees out. I know I'm headed for the beach no matter what. I'm not going in my bikini. Let's suit up for it. I'm going to put my raincoat on. I'm going to get my boots on. So we know we can see the challenges ahead, which doesn't mean that we are exempt from them, because we can see them. But we then can choose how we navigate. Just like, that road is closed. I'm going to New York. That road is closed. Or there's a snowstorm. We're going to have to navigate around some things. And that's one of the beauties of understanding the energy that is coming. We are always at choice. And so if I'm predicting something for somebody, which I can see some outcomes, absolutely. But if anybody can only, a psychic or anything in my viewpoint, can only see the possible outcomes they can see in that moment. And that person can make different changes, different choices, and their path their choices can continue to expand or contract depending on their level of consciousness and the choices that they make. I try to steer people. I find out what people really want, what their purpose is, what is really on their heart. And that's where I'm helping them to access and steer towards. And a lot of that has to do with, frankly, understanding too, what's in your way. And so in the way I work, I don't work on one level of just, I give you insight, go run with it. I don't think insight actually is really useful unless we know what to do with it. So then I'm helping people to drop into their hearts. I'm helping people to access the part of them that's already connected to their soul blueprint, but maybe they haven't been, they're not aware of that, and help them make themselves more aware of what their internal wiring is. And then helping them to close the gap and clear the energy. I do a lot of energy clearing, clear the blocks, step out of your shadow, so that we can get down to some practical action. So you want to create a business. So you want to put your purpose into a book. So you want to get into a relationship that's really going to serve your evolution. Well, someone can just tell you what to do, but if you don't know how to get past yourself, knowing what to do isn't necessarily going to help. You need to know how to actually do it. So I work on all those levels with people, and that's just how my gifts are wired up. So I'm going to take a breath, and we're going to talk about where Vedic astrology came from. But I want to let you in here and take a breath, okay?
Yeah, no problem. No, that's great. Now, would you say that Vedic astrology would be more accurate, or why would you prefer Vedic astrology over Western, in your explanation here?
So I was into Western astrology, and I have a great deal of respect for Western astrology. So anyone listening in, don't hear that I don't. I think all systems have a lot of value. When I came upon Vedic astrology, granted, I was already immersed in yoga and such. Vedic astrology comes from the Vedas, just like Ayurveda, which Deepak Chopra made popular in the West, came from the Vedas as well. Ayurveda means the science of life. And Vedic astrology, the Sanskrit word is Jyotish, means the science of light. We're measuring and quantifying the light of the planets and sun, etc. It has many levels that Western astrology doesn't have. It's a very complex system. I say that it's like a glass mansion that either you're in the center of, or we're looking at something that's in one of the rooms of your glass mansion of your life. But we can look at so many different angles. We can go up in the attic and look, we can go in the basement and look, we can go in the foyer and look, we can look at it from so many different levels. We can really see, is that what it is? But how does it look from here? It gives us a very deep vantage point, being able to look at something from a lot of layers. There's some planetary, it's a solar lunar system. So we're really paying attention to the lunar part of the system. There's a nakshatra system. There is let me explain what that is. Let me back up a little bit. It is the same zodiac. In that it's the same constellations, I should say, but Vedic astrology is the sidereal zodiac and Western is the tropical zodiac. They're different vantage points we're looking at the zodiac from. The sidereal zodiac, we also call the true placement of the planets. If we look up in the heavens right now, Jupiter is in Aquarius, Mars is in Scorpio, and Western may say that those planets are a sign ahead because they keep time differently and they start the zodiac of Aries from a different placement. I am of the personal opinion we keep time more truly to what time is, not just generalizing where time is. So therefore, when I stepped into the system, it felt much more accurate. My teacher I went to a reading with said, oh, you're wired up to do this. And I'm like, yeah, right. I have a lot on my plate. And so, but after seeing him a couple of times, he's like, no, really, you are. And I jumped into his first level course and it just sucked me in like a vortex. And I have been devouring it ever since. It's a lifelong study for sure. So again, it's about timing. It's about viewpoint. It's about different layers. It's about putting an equal value, or not equal, really looking at through the lunar calendar. Vedic astrology comes from India. And let me just explain what I talked about before, which is the lunar part of it. So you have your constellations. So, again, we've got Leo, we've got Sagittarius, we've got Virgo, we've got Gemini, we've got all our constellations. And on the backdrop of those constellations is what we call the nakshatras, the lunar mansion. So constellation actually translates to Rashi in Sanskrit, which means a heap. It's a heap of stars. And within that heap of stars, then we in Vedic astrology, the astronomers broke it down to smaller increments. And in those smaller increments is a nakshatra. So there's a different energy in a smaller increment within a constellation. So your sun isn't necessarily, or your moon isn't necessarily just in Pisces. It happens to be in Uttara Bhadrapada, or it happens to be in Revate. So this again, it gives another layer and colors and flavors that element of us and gives us some different vantage points there. So the moon, and we also read the chart as the most important is from the ascendant and from the moon, not from the sun. It's so we have that shift too, and those things are moving much quicker and give us more information.
Now, is our signs, would our signs be different for Vedic astrology versus Western?
Depending on the date you were born, typically you're going to find that your sign, and when you're considering your sign, you're thinking your sun sign. In Vedic astrology, we want to know what your moon sign is and what your ascendant. That's really your sign. But the sun sign, I want to say, comes third. So it's typically depending on, like I have an April 19th birthday. So therefore I'm right on that, what they would call in Western call the cusp. But in Vedic, my sun is still in Aries because it's not the cusp, but it otherwise it would have been a sign ahead. So, or excuse me, a sign behind. Otherwise I would have been a Pisces. So it just, it's usually because of where we start the zodiac and where Western does, where Aries actually starts, which is the beginning of the zodiac. So typically people fall a sign back.
Right. Now, could you talk a little bit about how archetypes are connected and exactly what they are when it comes to Vedic astrology and what we can learn from that?
Yeah. So I'll talk about that in two different ways. In the Vedic tradition, there's so much mythology. And also in the Greek tradition, which is where Western astrology is birthed from. And archetypes in general are within the mythology. And the beautiful thing about archetypes is it's a soul language. So I can say to you, the messenger. These are my archetypes. So and behind me, I have the mystic and I have the sage up here. And as I say, those 3 archetypes, for everyone listening in here, a different story just opens up that you can relate to. It's like a story that's been translated for maybe someone in French and someone in Italian and someone else in Sanskrit. It's something you can personally relate to. It's on a soul language. It's a deep language. And so it's very personal. So archetypes, I believe, have been used throughout time because of that. We could describe bigger concepts and package those concepts within an archetype. And then we can all have a relationship to that packet of information within our own reference system that makes sense for us. So I believe that archetypes and archetypal language is very generous in that way, and it's very much a soul language. From Vedic astrology and from India, there's a lot of mythology. There's these great mythological stories, and all the different gods and goddesses, again, are just stories to help us to understand different aspects of ourselves. And archetypes are just so beautiful about that, because we're a lot to understand. And if we can understand our minds in a certain way and our hearts in a certain way and in a certain flavor, or what we're dealing with, that's super useful. In the Sacred Wealth Code system, I was helping people understand, because the essence is where purpose and prosperity intersect. And really, my definition of wealth, it's not money. Money is a common currency of exchange that we use on this plane. There's nothing wrong with it. It's part of wealth, but it isn't all of what wealth is. And depending on your chart and how you're wired up, what's important to you, what actually makes you feel wealthy, for each one of us is going to be very different. And that's the first piece of work I do with a lot of people, helping them to taking through a process to understand. And in fact, there's a process in my book called Creating Your Wealth Dream. So you really understand, because a lot of people are going for something with wealth that it's not really what's going to make them happy and feel fulfilled. So it's very interesting and good to know, whether it's a lot of savings in the bank, or being able to put your kids in college, or if there is some material house or item that you really want, or you just want the freedom to be able to go anywhere in the world. There's a certain charity you want to be able to donate to. Different things make us feel wealthy, and to really understand that. And I can also see that in people's charts. So what I noticed in this Sacred Wealth Code, this Donna's Yogas, this place where I found the wealth and the prosperity and the intersect and the scientific principle, that I noticed that this is really where people's highest value gifts are, the divine gifts you have, that when you use them, they really connect you directly with your purpose, which then in turn connects you directly with your prosperity. And this is super valuable to have. So within that, I would be helping people understand what their gifts are and working them through that. And then the archetypes showed up a few years ago. And I was so grateful they came onto the scene, because, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, because then I could look at someone's chart, and depending on where the planets are placed, because there's 3 archetypes for each planet, one for the north, one for the south node of the moon, or how they intersect, then I could let them know, hey, you've got a spiritual strategist in your chart. Oh, you've got a harmonious connector or artist in your chart, and how they play together. But people could have more relatability with the archetypes and with this body of work, because they're like your inner guides. And I have programs that are designed around helping people really to master their Sacred Wealth Code and understand it, and a lot of tools and resources on how to use it. And in my book, there's a lot of great resources too. Now, in the Vedic system, in Indian mythology, there are, like I said, lots of archetypes. But I live in the West, and I mostly speak English, and I speak to people all over the world, but that's my reference system. So when the archetypes came through, it was beautiful, because they really came through with the essence that was very true to the archetypes to a certain planet, but in English Western types of terms: teacher, visionary, mystic, magician. These are all things that people that I speak to could really relate to. And they didn't just come in with the gifts, they came in with the shadow, because a lot of us aren't in our gifts because we're locked up in our shadow. So I love the archetypes. They also turned into, that's why there's paintings behind me. They also turned into an oracle deck, which has been just super wonderful and fun, like the engineer or the collaborator. That, like I said, there's 23 archetypes, and also have a journal. So these are tools just to help people connect more. And like my Oracle deck is wonderful. You could work with your Sacred Wealth Code archetypes, and I have a lot of different processes and free gifts that go along with that. But you could also realize, wow, I have to, let's say I had to get in a position of leadership today, and I don't really feel up to it. Well, I could really call on the archetype. I could find the leader in the deck. I could call on this archetype. I could read about it. I could do the meditation that's connected with it, and I can activate this energy because it's actually in me. I just need that connection point. So there's lots of wonderful ways to work with the archetypes. So all those archetypes are within us somewhere. Your Sacred Wealth Code is usually 3 to 5 that are involved with your wealth and prosperity, but there's certainly archetypes that represent your relationship and other aspects of life.
Now, what are your methods for finding out what archetypes for each person?
I look at their chart. I look at your chart, and this is the precision part of it, and I find out exactly what it is. There's 3 different levels of Sacred Wealth Code readings, and I do other kinds of Vedic, like the Soul Success Map is a full-on Vedic astrology reading. I also do an aligned entrepreneur where we look at all the transits and how are we going to launch and move your business this next year and things like that. The Sacred Wealth Code archetype and reading on my base level reading, then I look at the chart and I see what archetypes they are. And again, it has a lot to do with the relationship with the planets. There's some unique identifiers that I put before those archetypes. And then my team will put that together in a PDF, and there's a training and a meditation, and people get that. Some people choose an audio reading where they get that, and then they ask me a specific question. I answer that on audio. And some people choose to get in with a live session where we just get down and dirty about everything as far as their Sacred Wealth Code goes once they get their archetype reading. And then we talk about it. And then again, that's kind of built into all of my courses and programs, even though I might be working with entrepreneurs or spiritual development or just really understanding your Sacred Wealth Code.
Earlier, you briefly mentioned numerology. Could you talk a little bit about how you use numerology, in connection with your readings?
I don't use it very much in connection with my readings.
Okay.
I'm aware of numerology. It's not one of my strong, I know what my numerology is, but it's not one of my specific places of expertise by any means. But, and I did bring that up, because I believe that there are many different tools to help us to connect in and see more of who we are on the inside. Look at our soul blueprint, and I call the Vedic astrology chart your soul blueprint. There are other, Western astrology has a lens in on that too. This just happens to be, Vedic astrology happens to be my lens. With Vedic astrology, there are certain things like certain planets represent different days of the week. I mean, we come down into mundane levels, and we could say maybe numbers are involved. There we have a whole section of astrology that's Muhurta, about calculating when is the best time to do what. When I married my husband, darn right, we calculated the day and the time, precisely.
Wow, that's great. Now I want to talk about the Sacred Wealth Code. What are the basic fundamentals and the most important things you think people should know about the Sacred Wealth Code?
That you have one, number one, everyone has one. And that if you don't have the level of wealth, and wealth is different than money. I'm going to just hammer that home again. And even in the chart, you have 3 purpose houses, and they're followed by a wealth house. Each purpose house is followed by a wealth house. And so that represents different aspects of purpose and different aspects of wealth. Now, wealth follows purpose for a reason. Wealth is what we need to acquire in order to fulfill what we're here to do, in order to fulfill our purpose. We don't have that wired up collectively as a program in the West. A lot of us have our circuits jammed. It's really hard not to, with the information, the misinformation that's pumped out at us on what we need to consume, what we should have, what wealth is actually money, and all of that. When you know what wealth is truly for you, then that's such a beautiful guidepost, because some people, it might be like, well, I'm never able to make the money. Well, if I might look at your chart and say, your wealth code is really wired up in your spiritual houses. And there is a way for you to access the level of wealth you need for this 3D experience on this planet that's going to feel very fulfilling for you as a spiritual being you are, because that's what's most important to you. Where some people are more wired up to acquire more on the physical plane. But when we can unplug from that cultural programming, I think the Sacred Wealth Code really helps us do this, because we do a lot of clearing processes too, and really get down to what is it just for me, then that can really put us on a path of fulfillment instead of just getting stuck in acquisition, which I really believe in the West that we're very stuck in acquisition. And just to kind of go off to the side here a little bit, it's a very important point. From the Vedic tradition, there are 4 stations of life. We have the first station of life, and that station of life is all about just waking up and who are we in this world, right? We get education. Then we have the second station of life, which is more about being a householder and having children and having a career and it really has a lot to do with acquiring. And then we get kind of stuck there. That's kind of where we are in that acquiring place. The third station of life is called Kama, and it is really the place of fulfillment of our desires, where supposedly here we're going to go into retirement, right? Fulfillment of your desires is actually ruled Kama by relationship houses. And because we don't tend to fulfill our desires on our own, we tend to do that. And that's why we see a great movie, buy a new pair of shoes. We're like, oh, so-and-so should have this. They should be here with me. Why aren't they listening to this concert with me? We want to fulfill our desires with the people that we care about and love. Kama is about actually finally getting there and just relaxing and opening up and fulfilling our desires. And that's not something that's really nurtured in our culture at all. It's like get more. And then even bumping off retirement. And then the last station of life is the moksha station of life. And that is where we relinquish, and it's like where we don't need so much and we let go. We're transcending. We're starting to move into, we know we're going to leave this dimension and things here aren't as important to us. And we're if we're not too sick or not too drugged up or whatever it may be, or not too much in poverty, then we can really just relax into being. It is a time that's really set off for another level of our spiritual development. And we're not really plugged into that so much here. So there's some beautiful things that this system brings in. And I believe that when people really understand what sacred wealth is for them, and that's why I don't call it your money wealth, although money is part of it, absolutely. But what is sacred to you? What's really on your heart without anybody judging you? Like freedom is a real high aspect for me. Really, I have a very purpose-driven chart. I'm probably going to be in my work in the world for a long time because that's just the way I'm wired up. But not everybody is wired up that way, and that's okay. But you need to know this crazy beast of you. How are you wired up?
Yeah, man, that's so cool how you can get all this information from someone's charts. Now, talk a little bit about what the 4 pillars are and the Sacred Wealth Code archetypes.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the archetypes already, and I'll talk a little bit more about those. And the 4 pillars, I think I have my book up there, which are in my book, Your Sacred Wealth Code, Unlock Your Soul Blueprint for Purpose and Prosperity. So we have 4 pillars of wealth. I take in my book, what I love about my book and my programs, but my book is so user-friendly and anybody can get it. It's a big, $17. I can get it on my website. You can get it on Amazon. And the 4 pillars of wealth help you to walk through a system, and it's a playbook and a interactive, like you're going to write things down. I'm going to take you through inner processes. There's a free portal where you can listen to some of these processes if you don't want to read them and do them, and I can just guide you through them. And the first pillar of wealth is you're harnessing your big why. And when we know why we're doing something or why we want something, we have our purpose. Why equals purpose. And there's our underlying core divine purpose, and then the purpose for our business or work in the world. There's the purpose for our relationships, the purpose for, we want the purpose for wealth. So understanding what your sacred wealth is and understanding your wealth code is really first step is to understand why you even want the wealth that you want. And you can think of your why as, and that first pillar is like the vehicle that is going to get you, the vehicle of your sacred wealth code. The second pillar of wealth is our passion. And passion is I think of it a little bit different. It's because there's a lot of things that teach that your passion, they lead, do your passion, and they lead you through your passion in order to find your purpose or what you should be doing. Nothing wrong with that. I just go from I feel a more precision place from having the viewpoint that I have. So as far as our passion goes, you have got to have the fuel to do what you've decided you're here to do, right? And if you don't have the fuel, so if your vehicle, you know what your vehicle is, you know what your purpose is, but you don't have any fuel in your tank, you're not going to be able to go anywhere. So your passion, whatever it is you're passionate about, whether it's directly related with your purpose or not. So you could, maybe your purpose has something to do with, you have a business that's, or a foundation or something that's around helping children and education in some way. But you're like so passionate about flying, and like you're a pilot or you love hang gliding or something. And that's not directly related, but by doing those things and being engaged in those things you're passionate about, or if you're passionate about spiritual texts, but you have a really, really practical corporate kind of a mission, but by engaging in those passions, it feeds your soul, it feeds your heart, it keeps you juiced up so that you have the energy to do what you're here to do. So that's really important to know what you're actually passionate about, and if it's and allow it to be whatever it is. Be really truthful about that. That'll give you the fuel to get where you need to go. The third pillar of wealth, that's really your divine gifts, and these are your superpowers. And if you can think about, you've got your vehicle, you've got the fuel in the tank, and then your divine, and you're going to take that down to the road of, you're riding the road of your purpose. And at the intersection where the streets of purpose and prosperity intersect, the houses on the corner is where your divine gifts live. And when you really can connect with what your divine gifts are, and I give you a process to do that within my book, and I teach about that, or I give them to you in a reading, however, lots of ways to access this work, then you know what to focus on as far as literally your superpowers, your tools. We've been taught that we are good at a lot of things, or what our parents wanted us to do, or what we've gotten recognition for. But we were born with a PhD in some things that only we can do and be the way we can. And it's such a natural state of being. Like, you're in the work that you're doing, Chris, and I'm sure, yes, you pull long hours sometimes like I do or whatever, you get tired, but it just pulls you into it. Like, this is what you're here to do. And as you told me before, it was a little bit of a surprise for you, actually. So having raised 4 children too, I've watched, how their divine gifts, if you give them the environments to just let them come to the surface and let them go on their own journey, how they will be revealed. But I've also seen how, people get so jammed up and they're just not happy. So if you're doing something and you're like, I don't know what I'm good at, or I'm good at this, but it doesn't feed me, you're probably doing something you're good at, not one of your divine gifts. So it's really important to know. And that's the third pillar of wealth. And the fourth pillar of wealth is your soul's challenges. And this is really the greatest gateway to, really, I like to call it the unseen gateway to wealth, because there is a lot of our energetic currency. Like, okay, so imagine that you have $100 worth of energetic currency every day that you get to spend. And you're financing your energy to go to work. You're financing, what it takes to eat and stay healthy or not stay healthy, to have the fears that you have, to have all the unconscious beliefs and fears you don't know you have, and then to be creative. We have to have a certain amount of currency in present time in order to create something or in order to heal. But if we're energetically bankrupt, like a lot of people are, then we don't have the energy in present time to do what we want to do or create what we want to create. A lot of our gifts can get locked up in our shadow side, as we touched on a little bit before with the archetypes represent so beautifully. So I'll relate back to my story. When I lost my yoga center, and I vowed to stay on my knees and figure this thing out. Like, where was I stuck? Why didn't this come together? I thought I was on purpose. Well, I was really stuck in part of my wealth code. I was stuck in the shadow part of the wealth code. I have a great administrator archetype in my chart. It's not part of my sacred wealth code. And sure, I've run companies before. I am brilliant at organizing and running things. I was running, and I'm looking through my card deck right now. I'm looking for the administrator, and for some reason, I'm not finding him. I was running the whole show, and I really should have had more of a team, but because of some of my early upbringing, and I was very independent because I had to live on my own and nobody really gave to me. So I didn't know how to really receive. I thought I was a great receiver, but come to find out, I had not learned that very well. And so I was, very independent, but I was doing it all and I was exhausting my bandwidth, and I wasn't fully in my gifts because I was spending too much of my energetic currency doing things I was good at, instead of doing just what I'm brilliant at. And so when we find those places, there's usually beliefs that are connected to that. Part of my belief around that is I had to do in order to be recognized or be loved. And because that's the way it was in my family, that's the way I grew up. So untangling that, and I have processes to do that. And even in the book, there's a beautiful process to help you step out of that shadow, reclaim. And once we do that, it's we reclaim, like we liberate the gift. And then we're able to, step into really what we're really brilliant at. And then I have to say there is a piece, and that's the 4 pillars. But I work with a lot of people. One of the core things is the fear of being seen for your gifts, because a lot of our true gifts are unseen. Whether you're a great communicator, or you're really intuitive, you see behind the scenes, or you're a great problem solver. It can be super practical too. But where can I show my degree for this? And we're in a society that says, show me first, instead of, really tapping into the energy of being and be it first. So it was a big journey. And what I love about the Sacred Wealth Code and the way that it's sort of channeled through me based on a scientific principle is that it allows, I feel like I'm giving you the instruction manual to a part of yourself that you might not have it for, which is just really liberating.
Now, how important would you say is getting rid of the fear of, doing a certain thing or going in a certain direction, even after you've given somebody a reading and you've given them the tools? Do you find that based on people's fear is what hinders them from actually going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, again, we're locked up in our shadow. And it's why I've created courses like the Sacred Wealth Code Journey, which will walk you through. It's a self-paced course that you can get, and it walks you through how to really, with your reading, how to really unlock this for yourself and some processes around that. I have a Sacred Wealth Circle, which takes you deeper into the inner work that you need to do. Whether it's working on your boundaries, or whether it's really understanding what your masculine, feminine energy is, all this is part of things, or whether you really want to put your work out in the world and you come into my solutionary blueprint, which is we're going to work on the inner growth and the business growth and get past all the blocks and barriers. Now, one of the things that happens for all of us, I'll ask you I'll answer it first and I'll ask you. I know for myself, I'm a pretty brave person and I've been doing a lot of work for many years, but I haven't overcome all my fears. Have you overcome all yours?
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed is the more we expand, the more we occupy more of our essence and who we truly are. This is an expanding universe. We are much more expansive than we give ourselves credit for. And as we sort of wash away and let go of some of these patterns and the things that are trying to sort of control us, be it patterns or cultural stuff coming at us now, as we expand, there's always another layer to expand into. So there may still be another layer of fear that we're going to come up against. But the more you learn how to walk with that fear, and it just doesn't get to make the choices. It doesn't get to drive the bus. It doesn't get to tell us to stop, but we befriend that part of ourselves, and we understand some of the tools to navigate that part of ourselves and understand maybe it's not going to go away. Because anytime we are up against the unknown, fear tends to show up. And then we've got the deep-rooted fears. So yes, the idea to me is to get better at working with fear and not letting it paralyze you, because that's what it tends to do, or put the roadblock up so that it keeps you in your past and that you keep reliving the past. And if we want to create anything new in our life, we have to do it from present time. We cannot do it from a predictable past type energy, or else we'll recreate the same thing over and over and over again. Now, that might be good for predictability if you want to create the same income stream or the same romantic date night over and over again. But at some point, it'll probably get stale because it's always going to want to expand. So that great fear of the unknown is, I believe, where that true fear comes in, and it can play out in a lot of ways. And that's why I just think it's really great to have ways to sort of neutralize that fear, to own it, to move past it, and not be so afraid of the fear itself.
Very good. Now, is there any people in particular that you find that you're more successful in working with or coaching over others?
I would say, okay, I work with a lot of women, okay? And I work with a few really amazing men, and I love working with men too. As I say, I really like to work with people that I would call, or they would consider themselves conscious. I love working with conscious visionaries, whether you want to start a business or not. And because I can help you just get started, absolutely, and I have tools and resources for that. But I have to say, I'm really like, where my gifts really stand out is when you have something going on already, or you're making that big transition, and you want to know how do I take this to the next level, and how do I get past what's keeping me from taking this to the next level or creating this new thing. And that's what a visionary is. And that can be from like, hey, I've got a book inside me, or I know I have something inside me, or I know this job doesn't fit me anymore, and I can feel this burn, but I don't know what the heck it is. Love to help, put some practicality around that and some understanding, and help, birth something. Or, wow, I've got this thing and it's grown to this. It's getting unwieldy. Boy, I got to manage my energy, and I need to know where it's, how am I going to really take this forward so it doesn't all crash down. So I like working on all those spectrums. But if you consider yourself a conscious visionary at any level, that's my peeps.
That's great. Now, if the audience is interested in finding out more about your coaching and what you're doing, and would like to maybe schedule something, what's the best way they can do so?
You can find me at solutionary.com, SOULUTIONARY. The word solutionary spelled with soul. It's solutionary, SOUL. And I'm also on all the social media platforms, Prema Lee Gurreri, at Prema Lee Gurreri. And also I have a pretty thriving YouTube channel as well. And I do at least bi-monthly astrology updates and other things there as well. On my website, I have a Sacred Wealth Code quiz, and you can take that free quiz and find out one of your archetypes, and it'll give you a nice PDF printout and a little bit of training that goes along with it. My readings are all listed there. My programs are all listed there. And you can find my book, my cards, and also my journal, which we didn't talk much about, which is great because it goes along with this whole process. And also all of those have some free resources, meditations, processes, and such that is on a portal on my website you can get. And all of them are available on my website. And I'm just going to say they're all available on Amazon and in some bookstores as well. And if you just Googled Your Sacred Wealth Code on Amazon, you would find it.
Very good. Now, to close out, I have one more question. In the past couple of years, have you noticed more people kind of coming online and coming into their own and wanting to have their own success in their own business and do things for themselves more? Because I've noticed quite a few more people kind of coming into their own and wanting their own success just in the past couple of years. And I don't know if this is something that just I'm noticing, but what do you think?
No, I think I'm absolutely noticing it too. I think part of it is just the evolution of our times. Part of it is, the whole COVID paradigm we're living in. Mm-hmm. We didn't even go there, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. But the COVID paradigm that we're living in has allowed some people and companies to see, wow, we could just have meetings here. We don't have to waste all this time getting here and getting there. At the same time, I think it's good for people to be able to get together. I think that it's also liberated people to try something new. And some people have really had to because of, losing employment in different ways. And I think it's really great that, there hasn't been a time in history where you could go, make your own show. You just make your own show. Let's have a show, and you could broadcast it. You don't have to go. Back when I had my yoga center, I had this dream of having a streaming show. Now that was before, I'm dating myself, but that was before streaming was happening. And so I actually collaborated with the local TV station, and I did some shows for them that we shot at my studio. But that's my thing, is I wanted to be able to just have the studio set up with cameras, and I'd be able to teach workshops and stuff and have it all streamed. We didn't have, social media wasn't what it was. I mean, that was just kind of all getting going. Like, we have so many platforms that are just at our fingertips now. And that's a beautiful thing. You don't have to have this big bankroll behind you to dabble in, to get something started. And what I like to say to people is, like, if you have that in you, like, just play with it, because if you're willing to start something, it'll interact with you. You can't think it all out. You cannot map it all out for you. You have to get in. I mean, this happened for you. Did this happen to me? You have to get in and play with the work, and it will start, the divine will start kicking your feet in the right direction if you're really open to that and not super attached to it being one way. Even when I sat down to write my book, and here I've been talking with the archetypes and about them for a long time, but when they channel through into words that would be on paper for time, I was even surprised at what showed up. So, don't be afraid to interact with all the great resources we have now.
That's great. Well, Prema, thank you so much. And I'd love to have you on sometime again in the future.
Love to. Great connecting with you. And I love what you're doing here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk again soon for sure. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow.